to Face with a Name, which is our opportunity to talk with some of the staff and volunteers and students that make Asheville Community Theater the place that it is. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Jill Summers, who is the technical director at ACT. Jill, tell us a little bit about your job at ACT and how long you've been there.
Yeah, so my responsibilities are building all of the sets for the shows along with my crew that I work with, and running all of the shows with our volunteer run crews. So I'm responsible for most of the production aspects except for costumes. I think the job title I would probably, over like set designer or technical director, that I would give myself most is creative problem solver. And I feel like that is the crux of what I do and the crux of what I'm really good at doing. And that's being able to look at problems that you're given and figure out the most creative solution that's going to surprise people, that's unexpected, and that's going to solve the problem in a way that nobody would see coming. So when I get to a set design, that's kind of what I really look at. Rather than thinking about like stage pictures, I'm more thinking, what are the problems in this set? Like, what are the things that nobody's going to expect us to be able to accomplish? And that's what I focus on first. And then I kind of figure out how to solve those things, and then I build the world around that.
How do you work with the rest of the design staff, with a sound designer or a lighting designer or Karina on costumes? How do you work with the rest of the design team?
Well, as the technical director, I'm kind of there to make sure that all of the designers are on the same page and that we're all working off of the same plan of what we're doing on something. You know, if something's going to be a voiceover or if it's going to be a mic backstage, that kind of thing. If Karina and I, we have to coordinate a lot on quick changes and things like that. I have to make sure that she has places to put her costume racks so that she can, you know, get an actor in and out of a ball gown in 3 seconds or something like that. Sometimes I have to know ahead of time, are you going to need to be able to stuff a crew person in there so that they can change Dorothy's dress in between the tornado, like that kind of thing. So we all work very closely together, and it's kind of my job to wrangle everybody and make sure that we're all working towards the same final product.
So do you have some favorite designs maybe that you've done that you can tell us about, and how those came together, what problems you were addressing with them, and why they might be some of your favorites?
Yeah, my favorite shows, I think about them in 2 categories. There's shows that are like visually my favorites, that when I go back and I look at pictures of them, I'm like, oh, that's beautiful, and that looks great. And I think like, man, I got that really close to being done, which is rare for me to actually get shows to like 90% finished. Usually I'm at like 75 if I'm lucky. So there's shows like that, and ones that I would put in that category would be like Trailer Park, Great American Trailer Park Musical, which I just really was a fan of my trailers. I thought they looked really good, and I had a lot of help making those, and they were, I think, just great. Sweeney Todd, I really was very happy with how Sweeney Todd came out. There were a lot of challenges in that show, a lot of things, you know, everything has to move with the music, so it has to be very precise, and you have to really, from the beginning, know how every scene was going to transition into the next scene in time with the music. So that was very challenging, and I think it ended up looking pretty too, which was nice. And Full Monty and Avenue Q. I think what I try to do most when I get a show is try to figure out how to distill it down to one location if I can, because that's the best way to do a musical in our space, is to make it as small as you can, so then that you can make that smaller world as detailed as you can. So I think I did that really well with Full Monty, because I was able to make kind of a complicated set of locations, all very grounded in just this one steel mill, and I think it worked. And then yeah, Avenue Q was just fun. Avenue Q was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing that one.
So Jill, you, I know, have been working on some models, or you have some models you can share with us, and this is part of the design process, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we would love to see them and tell us about them.
Yeah, so a model is kind of, it's something that you make to help yourself. It's something that you make to help your director. It's a tool that helps everybody understand what's happening with the set, because a lot of times some people aren't very visual, and you know, they can't look at a ground plan or can't look at an elevation and really get the feel of what the spacing is going to be like. So this is a tool that helps the entire company understand what you're doing with the show. So I've got two models right here. The lower one is what I was working on for Legally Blonde, and this actually surprisingly uses a lot of stock that we have. ACT has a pretty nice scenery stock, so most of this was me trying to work with things that I know that already exist in the space. This one was for Rabbit Hole, and when you make a model like this, you can use like little clip-on lights and your own desk lights to kind of get a sense of the moods that you can make with the lighting. So it's not just a scenic aid, it can also be a lighting design aid to kind of like help you think of where you can go with those kinds of things.
What does a typical week in the life of a technical director at ACT look like?
Well, I got two modes pretty much. I have working on a show mode and running a show mode. So pretty much every other month is completely different for me, which is kind of frustrating. It's hard to get into a routine of any kind. But when I'm building a show, we usually get in at 10 every day, and we work until 5 or 6, depending on who needs rehearsal on stage. And we'll work Monday through Friday, and that's a pretty typical like work week, you know, like a normal person might have, a little later. That's why I got into theater, so I would never have to go anywhere at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Good call.
Yeah, it was a very deliberate decision. Yeah, and then we have tech, and when we're in tech, I'm pretty much at the theater the entire week. If I'm ahead, which is very rare for me to be ahead, then I may be able to come in the afternoon and just stay for the evening, but usually I'm coming in still at 10 o'clock in the morning, trying to get the set finished before we open. And then once we open, I'm only working towards the tail end of the week and in the evenings and on the weekend. So, and that's when I'll use my time to start working on my next design or the next design after that.
And so what drew you to technical theater in the first place? How did you end up in this world?
I didn't start doing theater until I was in high school. It just wasn't really around me when I was growing up. I went to a really small private Montessori school for middle and elementary, and they didn't really have drama classes, so it wasn't something that I'd ever really experienced. And I was a jock. I played soccer and I played basketball, and eventually I destroyed my knees and couldn't really play sports anymore. And that's when my mom was like, you should do theater. You should be an actress. And I actually ended up hating acting. I thought it was the most stressful, anxiety-ridden thing that I'd ever experienced in my life. So I started doing backstage work when I was in high school, my junior and senior year, and that I loved. I loved everything about it.
So when you see the students come through some of the ACT education programs that maybe express an interest in technical theater, how do you encourage that? What would you encourage someone to do if they're interested in technical theater?
Come work on a show with me. I mean, I have kids that are 12 years old, 13. Sometimes it helps when they're younger if they have their parents doing it with them, but I can get kids going very early. I mean, there's a lot of kids that have been doing theater for such a long time, since, you know, maybe they've been acting since they were little kids. So it's easy to get into it and to understand it. And there's not a big barrier that prevents you from joining when you're young. As long as you can follow directions and, you know, pay attention, that's the only thing you really need to be able to do.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, Jill. I appreciate you doing this. Have a good day. Bye.
You too.